As I said, I'm Jeff Henriques. I'm one of the three people that are going to be talking to you this morning in this first session. And we really want to talk about how you can do things in your classroom that has a tremendous impact on your students. And I'm going to be talking about iClicker and the way in which I've been using iClicker not only to increase student engagement with the class, increase their performance, but also to create a sense of community. Sort of all the things that we want students to do. We want active learning. We want a sense of community, and iClicker is a way to do this. Just to give you a little bit of background, I teach large classes ranging in size from about 64 students up to about 450. These are just what I see when I look out when I'm teaching. This is my small class, which is statistics. I also teach introductory psychology and what up until this semester was known as abnormal psychology, but in the future will be known as psychopathology. And I've been teaching for 25 years now, which is a sobering thought. And I started using clickers, student response systems, back in 2004. They were a novel technology. I had a sales rep who, you should try this out. And so this was the old sort of infrared system, kind of like a TV remote where you've got to hit a receiver. And so we had these receivers installed throughout the classroom. And I'd ask a question, and students would have to try and get their responses to be recorded. When I first started using clickers, it was, as I said, it was a sort of a novelty, but students liked it. They found it, they claimed that it helped their learning, though initially it didn't really seem to make any difference in their learning, but it didn't hurt. So I kept using it. And as I have continued to use clickers, I've changed the way in which I've used them and now I think I use them in a way that really helps students learn. Initially it was just one or two questions, the things where I would take a pause in my lecturing, ask a question, go for a show of hands. This is the reason why we use clickers, because no one raises their hand. It's like, I go A, B, C, D, and then who's afraid to raise their hand and answer? So iClickers were a way for students to participate without having to sort of reveal themselves to their classmates. And so using a number of questions throughout the class session, I'm accomplishing a number of different things. I'm giving students a chance to pause and think about what they've been learning. I give them the opportunity to engage in retrieval practice. We know that retrieval, pulling things out of long-term memory, is a good way to reinforce concepts. That effort of retrieval helps strengthen that learning. I sometimes will use clicker questions as a way to start a class discussion. So what's your opinion about this? And now let's talk amongst ourselves. It's also a way to demonstrate concepts. I sometimes will use clicker questions throughout lecture as a way to introduce students to concepts in cognitive psychology. Rather than just telling them, I have them respond to questions and I say, oh, look, how many people chose this answer? Well, this is known as the availability heuristic. And you can also use clickers to replicate research studies, collect data from 400 people in a minute, and then talk about what it all means. And I also sometimes use clicker questions as a way to gently nudge my students to engage in things like reading the textbook or studying outside of class. There are a variety of different types of questions you can use with iClicker, so you're only really limited by your own creativity. I started out, I should say, with physical devices where you could only do multiple choice questions. And I kept using the physical clickers, even when it became available as an app, because I didn't want to give students a reason to have their phones out, because it's a source of distraction. Mm-hmm. But then we had a pandemic and everything went online, and my iClicker rep said, I'll give your students free access to iClicker Cloud. It's like, great. So it was a way to continue to, have an interactive class experience, and with all of the question options, and also just the realization that they're going to have their phones out, whether I have them use a physical device or not. I have made the transition to running iClicker Cloud, having them do apps. And the nice thing is I can use my phone for controlling presentations. So I want to give you a couple of examples of types of questions. So this is an example of a type of question that I'll ask. I will have just finished talking to my students about the whole idea of classical conditioning. This is a form of learning. If you recall Pavlov and his dogs, he rang a bell, gave them food, rang a bell, gave them food, and then rang the bell and they salivated. Okay. And so, we talk in psychology, we talk about, conditioned stimuli or unconditioned stimuli. And so I put this up, and what typically happens with this question is that everyone gets it wrong. Because in the Pavlov example, the conditioned stimulus, the stimulus that people are learning about, or the dogs are learning about, is a bell, okay? But in this example, the bell is or the tone, and I do this in class. Let's see. No, it's not gonna work. Okay, makes a loud noise. And I say, oh, did you have to learn about that? And they go, no, right. This was an unconditioned stimulus. So people respond to this question. We look at answers. And in this case, oh, look at this. We've got people who realize it's an unconditioned stimulus. And so students get immediate feedback when you ask these questions. They get insight into what they understand. They sometimes don't feel so alone because, when you struggle with something, you think, oh, everybody else gets it. I'm the only one who doesn't. And then you say, look, we have all these people who don't get it. Mm-hmm. And so that's really helpful in that regard. You can do types of questions that students I'm not going to give this one. We're going to jump along because I want to give you some other questions. But this is a type of test question. So students get practice with the types of questions you're going to ask on the test, rather than wondering when they wander into class, how does he test? I've tried to give them lots and lots of practice, okay? So you can do questions like this, where you highlight a spot on an image, whether you're trying to do something like, where did we all come from today? And then we have a sense of, who we are in the classroom. Or we can do something like, identify a brain structure or, a part of a neuron. And so folks will click in. We've got 3 responses, 4 responses, 5. Look at this. And I typically will run questions for 30 seconds to a minute, depending on how large a class. Okay. And if we look at results, you can see sort of where we've come from. Okay, but I will just tell you that we can also do short answer questions. You can display the results as a word cloud. You can do numerical answers or questions, multiple select. And this is an example of encouraging people to study. And then you can do anonymous questions, but I'll just pop this stuff up in terms of student impact on learning.